Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillah. Wassalatu wassalam ala ashraf al-anbiya wal mursaleen. Nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Allahumma anfa'na bima 'allamtana wa 'allamna ma yanfa'una. Allahumma zidna 'ilman innaka anta 'alimul hakim. Allahumma ij'al hadhihi al-muhadara hujjatan lana la hujjatan 'alayna ya rabbal alamin. Amma ba'd. This is the second part from the bab or chapter, Sujud as-Sahwi, from Shaykh Imam al-Hajjawi, rahimahullah ta'ala, and his book, Zaad al-Mustaq'ni. Zaad al-Mustaq'ni. Zaad al-Mustaq'ni is a book that is used by many of the scholars of Islam that study the fiqh of Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, rahimahullah ta'ala. In this chapter, there are many variances or positions or many different things. Therefore, what we cover is a synopsis or generalization of one particular madhab or school of thought. Having said that, all of them are based on evidence and positions of the scholars of the past. However, the purpose of us covering this is to understand what we do in those situations because they happen. Quick rehash, I'll mention it briefly, what we covered last week. Last week, we covered ziyadat, or additions. Additions, we said they are broken down into two sections or two parts. Fi'liya wa qawliya. Fi'liya and qawliya. Statements and actions, or actions and statements. Fi'liya, actions and statements. Actions are broken down into two parts. The things that are from the salat, the actions that a person do that are from the salat, and the actions that a person do that is not from the salat. And so if we look at the actions that a person do from the salat, now we explained this in detail in the last class, so we're not going to get into too many examples, but we're going to just a quick rehash. A person, when it comes to actions that are from the salat, then there are two things. Either a person did those actions that are from the salat, but they added to the salat. If they did them intentionally, then this will nullify the prayer. If they did them sahwan, the word sahwan means to forget. If they did it out of a mistake or they didn't know, then there are ways in which we talked about last week how to fix it. And likewise, we have qawliya, which are statements that are from the salat and statements that are not from the salat. If the statements that a person do that are from the salat, but not in the proper place in the salat, then this does not nullify the salat unless it is a person is giving taslim in a place that they're not supposed to. For example, they're reciting Al-Fatiha, and after reciting Al-Fatiha, they say Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. This will end their prayer, nullify the prayer. And then there's other statements that a person may do that is not from the salat that will nullify the salat. For example, if a person says, while they are praying, a brother walks past and says, Assalamu alaikum, alaikum salam. Or they say, hey, can you grab that for me? While you're in the salat, this will nullify that person's prayer. Today, and this is a quick summary, inshallah, you can review the class from last week online. If there are things that are still not clear, and I'm sure after this class there will possibly be things that are not clear again, and my advice is to review it. Today's class is very important because it deals with things that most people do not know. And without knowing what those things are, it's going to be virtually impossible for a person to fix their salat if they made a mistake in it. So today we're going to talk about a tark. A tark meaning leaving something off in the salat. A tark or naqs, something that is deficient from the salat. So what does that look like? You can either leave off one or two things in the salat. You can leave off one or two things from the salat that are supposed to be in the salat. So when they say a naqs or subtraction or taking away from the salat, they were taking away from one or two possible things. Number one, we're taking away from the pillars of the salat. Or number two, we're taking away from things that are obligatory or the wajibat of the salat. Now, in order to fix those problems, we have to know what the pillars of the salah are and what the wajibats of the salah are. So having said that, I need for whoever has a pen, pencil to write them down. Now, you're going to read in different books of fiqh, specifically in the school of Imam Ahmed. The numbering system may be somewhat different, but they're all the same. They just break it down to more, I guess, they break it down to more detail. But in general, they're all the same. Is everyone here familiar with the pillars of the salah? The things that if left off will nullify your prayer? Huh? Have you ever heard this before? Pillars of the salah? You never heard of pillars of the salah? That's no problem. We have things in the salat that are called pillars. If they are left off in the salat, you have no salat. You have no salat. Like, so
it's different between rukn and then.
So rukn are pillars.
Oh, that's what I.
Yeah, it's the same thing. A rukn is a pillar. And pillars in English, in Arabic is a rukn. Okay. And the plural is arkan. Okay. All right. So I'm going to list them because it's important to note as we cover the lesson today. You won't get anything unless you know what these are. Is that clear? If you don't know what these things are, the pillars and the wajibat, it will be difficult to follow this class. Therefore, I'm sure after I give them to you, and as we continue with the class, some people still might not be firm on what they are, but perhaps after you review it again with your notes and you know what they are, it'll be easier to follow, inshallah. The first pillar of the salat, al-qiyam, standing. Standing. So someone asked a question the other day. Is it permissible to pray an obligatory prayer while sitting in your car? Now, the asl, or the rule of thumb, the general rule of thumb is you cannot pray an obligatory prayer while you're sitting in your car. Why is that? Why can't you sit down and pray an obligatory prayer in your car? Why?
Is it because you're able to get out and pray? Or like,
Well, we just mentioned the first pillar. What's the first pillar? Standing. And we said without the pillar, what? You have no salat. Ahsant. So then, the first pillar of the salat, al-qiyam, means to stand. Now, we're not saying that if there's a situation you can't stand, for whatever reason, you just can't, for whatever the case may be. I'm not saying you can always pull over. You can pull over, get out your car, go maybe, we're not talking about the i'tirad, the possible exceptions. We're talking about the general rule. The general rule of thumb is you cannot pray an obligatory prayer sitting down. If it's a sunnah prayer, you can pray sitting down, as was reported on the Prophet ﷺ, that he prayed while riding on his riding beast. So a person might look at that hadith and say, here, the Prophet ﷺ prayed while he was riding, so why can't I pray in my car? The answer to that is the Prophet ﷺ was praying while he was riding for a sunnah prayer, not an obligatory prayer. And tabihu, pay attention, ya akhwan, as there are distinct difference between salawat that are wajibah and salawat that are sunnah. Things that are obligatory and things that are not. Khalas? And I'm sure that many people that pray in their cars, they look at this hadith and say, oh, I have a hadith here. When we look at a hadith, we have to understand the fiqh behind the hadith. What is the hadith talking about? And that's very important. So that's number one. The first pillar is al-qiyam. Al-qiyam, standing ma qudra, standing for the salat when you are able. The next one is takbiratul ihram. Takbiratul ihram is when you start off by saying Allahu Akbar. Okay? This is the second pillar. The third pillar, qira'at al-Fatiha, reciting al-Fatiha. Now granted, if we look at the Ahnaf and some of the other schools, they do not see it to be obligatory to recite al-Fatiha. And they use the statement of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, فَقَرُوا مَا تَيَسَّرَ مِنْ. Read that which is easy from you from the Quran. However, this is not the majority position of the scholars of Islam. But the fourth one is al-ruku'. Al-ruku'. This is a pillar of the salat, meaning if it is left off, it will nullify that particular rak'ah or what have you. We're going to talk about that a little later. The next one is rafa'a minhu, meaning coming up from the ruku'. So when we go down into ruku', we say Allahu Akbar, we put our hands on our knees, and we say what? Okay, we'll talk about that too. And then we rise up from it. When we rise up from the ruku', this is called rafa'a min, meaning to rise up from the ruku'. This is also a pillar in the salat. The next one is al-i'tidal. Al-i'tidal, it means to be calm and collective about it, not rushing through it. And some of the ulama say when you raise up, your bones go back into its normal place, sense of relaxation, and then you move to the next position. The next one is a sujood, prostration. So when you come up from ruku' and then you go down into sujood, this sujood or this prostration here is also from the pillars of the prayer. From the pillars of the prayer. وَرَفَعَ مِنَ السُّجُودِ. And raising up from the sujood is also from the pillars of the prayer. The next one is al-julus bayna sajdatain, sitting between two of the prostrations. Is that clear? The sitting between the two is also a pillar. طيب. وَالتَّمَأْنِينَ. Tama'nina is having a sense of tranquility in your salat. Calmness, easiness. The next one is at-tashahhud al-akhir. At-tashahhud al-akhir. At-tashahhud is when we say at-tahiyyatu lillahi. To the end of it, we're talking about at the end of the salat is a pillar. At the end of the salat is a pillar. Is that clear? Is that clear, Shaykh?
Yes.
Fine. وَالْجَلُوسُ لَهُ. And sitting for the last tashahhud, is also a pillar. And lastly, a taslimatan. And it's according to a taslimatan, meaning assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. This is also from the pillars of the salat. And a tartib. A tartib means that everything was done in a proper order. Alright? So they have them listed here as 14, and some others may say 13, and they say 12, so on and so forth. But everything I just mentioned will be in all of them. Perhaps they combine some in others and so on and so forth. But are we clear on what the arkan or the pillars of the salat are? Any questions about them? But if we understand what they are, then we can move on to al-wajibat. The difference between al-wajibat and a rukn. You cannot leave off a rukn or a pillar of the salat, but it's possible that a person may leave off something that is wajib from the salat. And we're going to talk about that today, insha'Allah ta'ala. Like, so the first of the things that are from the wajibat of the salat, there are 8 of them. Number 1, takbir li ghayri al-ihram. So we have something called a takbir al-intiqal. A takbir al-intiqal is when we make takbir and we move from one position to the next. This is called takbir al-intiqal. So for example, For example, if we have, let's say we have, when you say Allahu Akbar, and you recite Al-Fatiha in another surah, you recite Al-Fatiha in another surah, and then you say Allahu Akbar and go down into a ruku'. This is called Takbir al-Intiqal. Takbir, when you move from one position to the next. When you move from one position to the next. The next one is the statement, Sami Allahu liman hamida. When a person raises up from ruku', they say, Sami Allahu liman hamida. This is from the wajibat of the salat. And when you say, Rabbana wa lakal hamd, it's also from the wajibat of the salat. The fourth one, when a person says, Subhana Rabbil Azim, at least one time when they're in ruku'. At least one time. So when you're in ruku', what do you say? Subhana Rabbil Azim. You say that at least one time in ruku'. Like, at least one time. Sunnah is 3, but at least one time. Huh? At least one time. Right? Marratan. But say it 3 times. Okay? The point is, it has to be said. Alright? Like, wa subhana rabbil a'la in sujood. You say subhana rabbil a'la in sujood. That's the 5th one. The next one, rabbik filli bayna sajdatain. Between the 2 prostrations, when you come up, what do you say? Rabbik filli. This is also from the wajibat. And at-tashahhud al-awwal. At-tashahhud al-awwal. The first tashahhud is also from the wajibat. Tayyib. Which tashahhud is from the arkan, or the pillars of the salat? Which is it? Is it the last one or the first one? The last one. You sure?
Well, the first one is the one you just mentioned, and yeah.
So if we're praying Salat al-Dhuhr, right? The first tashahhud, the tahiyyatu to the end of it, is that from the pillars of the salat or from the wajibat of the salat? Wajibat. The last one, in the end of Salat al-Dhuhr, we do the tashahhud again. Is that from the wajibat or from the pillars? The pillars. Is that clear? It's very important that we know the difference between them. Because knowing the difference, it will allow you to understand this chapter. If you don't know them, you will not be able to understand this chapter. And this goes for anyone that is leading the salat. It's very important that they know the pillars of the salat. Alright? And the wajibat of the salat in case they go into situations like this. And the last one, al-julus lit-tashahhud al-awwal. Sitting for the first tashahhud is also from the wajibat. Sitting for the tashahhud al-awwal. Now, sitting for the first tashahhud. Now, sitting for the second tashahhud, that's what? From the pillars. Ahsant. So then, we mentioned 8 things that are from the wajibat, and we mentioned 14 things that are from the pillars. Are we clear on that? You sure? Thank you. So next, we're going to look at the map we have here on the board. So if we look here, we have a tark, or subtraction, right? A tark, and then we have naqs, it means the same here. The pillar. The pillar are 2 types. So let's say, for example, we subtracted or took a pillar away from the salat. Like, we either took that pillar away from the salat, like what? What's an example of a pillar? Let's say the ruku'. We didn't make ruku'. Let's say we recited Al-Fatiha in a surah, and then after that we go straight into sujood. We left off what? Al-ruku', that's 1 pillar. Al-rafa'a min, raising up from it, and al-i'tidal. We left off 3 pillars and went straight to sujood. Now, when we did that, the fact that we did that, it falls into 1 or 2 categories. Either we did it intentionally, or we forgot. Either we did it intentionally, or we forgot. If we did it intentionally, then it nullifies The whole prayer. It nullifies what? The whole prayer. A question. A person may say, why would a Muslim do that intentionally? Many of the scholars say, this is a su'al iftiradi, meaning it's a, if this were to happen, then this. Not that it's likely to happen. You understand? Not that this is not likely to happen, that a Muslim will do this intentionally. Right? If a Muslim did do it intentionally, perhaps they didn't know. So they also will probably fall into this forget or not knowing category. Well then, is that clear? Right. So right now we're saying that a person left off the ruku' and raising up from the ruku', forgetting. So what do they have to do? Do what you forgot and left off. Ya'ti bil matruk wujubin. Let's say, for example, they left off. They're in sujood right now, and they realize, you know what? I left off the ruku'. So what do? Huh? Return back. Stand back up. Stand back up in the position of standing. And go down into ruku'. Come up and then go down again. Is that clear? So that's the first thing that's obligatory upon them. The second thing, they have to make that prostration for forgetfulness, but that comes at the end of the salat. It comes where? At the end of the salat. Are we clear on that? We clear? Right. Write it down. All right. The second one. The wajibat. Let's say a person left off something that is wajib from the salat. Like what?
The supplication of the house.
How about the tashahhud al-awwal? The tashahhud. All right? Let's say a person go down. Let's say a person goes down into sujood for the first rak'ah, or they come up in the second rak'ah, instead of sitting, they come straight up for the third rak'ah. All right? In this case, right? If they did it intentionally, now they're in the third rak'ah, they already started reciting and everything, and they realize, you know what? I didn't make that tashahhud. Do they stop what they're doing and go back? No. Yes or no?
Yes.
You say yes.
If they did it intentionally?
If they did it intentionally, it nullifies the prayer. So we're not talking about that. They did it forgetting. Sahiyan. In this case, if they left off where they forgot to do the tashahhud al-awwal, and they stood up and they started reciting al-Fatiha to the end of it, then they don't have to go back to it. Rather, they can fix it at the end with sujood as-sahl. This is the difference between something that is a rukn, a pillar, and something that is a wajibat. If you leave off a pillar, you have to bring that pillar back to your salat before you can finish it, and you have to make that prostration out of forgetfulness. If you leave off something that is from the wajibat, then you don't have to come back and do it. You just have to make the prostration at the end. That's the distinct difference between something that is from the pillars of the salat and something that is from the wajibat of the salat. Is that clear? Right. So if this is clear, then we're going to read through the text. Inshallah ta'ala. Right. Qala Musannif rahimah. Sisters, if that's clear or not, I don't know. Huh?
They said no.
It's not clear.
They said no.
What?
They said
Says what?
I thought I would say no.
No. Like, فصل في الكلام على السجود للنقص. So now we're going to read the text of Imam al-Hajjawi rahimahullah ta'ala. And this here, once again, this is a summary for the most part. قال المصنف رحمه الله تعالى من ترك ركنا فذكره بعد شروعه في قراءة ركعة أخرى بطلت التي تركه منها. So the Shaykh rahimahullah ta'ala, he says, من ترك ركنا, whoever leaves off a rukn, فذكره بعد شروعه في قراءة ركعة أخرى بطلت التي تركه منها. Now let's say, for example, we left off the ruku' in that first rak'ah. He went down to the sujood and he stood back up and started reciting Al-Fatiha again. What should he do in this case? Let's look at the lazim, the tasawwur mas'ala. The first thing we have to do is visualize what just happened. This man or this sister, they started praying. You know, alhamdulillah, recite Al-Fatiha wa surah. And then after that, they went down straight into sujood. They didn't do any ruku', rising up from them, straight into sujood. And they made their two sajdatain, and then they stood up and they started reciting Al-Fatiha again, and then they realized, oh man, in the first rak'ah, I didn't do the ruku' and I didn't raise up from it. This is what he's talking about here. So he says, "Man taraka ruknan," whoever leaves off a pillar, فَذَكَرَهُ, and then they remember بَعْدَ شُرُوعِهِ, after they started reciting Al-Fatiha in the next rak'ah. What do? فِي قِرَاءَةِ رَكْعَةٍ أُخْرَى بَطَلَتْ الَّتِي تَرَكَهُ مِنْهَا. Then that whole rak'ah that they prayed before is now nullified. That rak'ah that they stood up now becomes the first rak'ah. Is that clear? Or no? Why does it nullify?
Because they left off a pillar.
They left off a pillar and they started to do what?
The next pillar.
They not only did they start the next, because they already did other pillars, but what did they do? What's the ibrah here? They started reciting Al-Fatiha. As soon as they started reciting Al-Fatiha, then it nullified that which came before it. Is that clear?
Yeah. Because if they caught themselves before they started to...
We didn't get there yet. Right now, just stay where we at right here, and then we're gonna slide onto that too, inshallah. Thank you. Then it says, وَمَنْ تَرَكَ رُكْنًا فَذَكَرَهُ قَبْلَهُ. Now, they say also, whoever left off a pillar, وَذَكَرَهُ قَبْلَهُ, and they remember it before they start reciting Al-Fatiha in the next surah, what is upon them? يَعُودُ وَجُوبًا فَيَأْتِي بِهِ وَبِمَا بَعْدَهُ. So let's give an example. Let's say that this person, they started reciting Al-Fatiha. They started reciting Al-Fatiha in a surah. They went down, they forgot, they go into a ruku', they went straight into sujood again. They come up, and they go down to sujood again. They stand up, and they realize, oh man, I messed up. They didn't start reciting Al-Fatiha. What do? They go back to ruku', go down on ruku', come up from ruku', go down to sujood again. All that? Is that clear? All that, Sheikh? Like, questions? No questions. All right, let's move on. وَإِنْ عَلِمَ بَعْدَ السَّلَامِ. Now, here's another scenario. The person now realizes that they left off that rukn after they made taslim. Let's say they're on the last rak'ah. They went down. Let's assume they prayed Salat al-Isha. They left off the ruku' and raising up from the ruku'. They went down straight to sujood and to the end of it, the shahud al-akhir. They did the last tashahud. And then they made taslim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. And it says, وَإِنْ عَلِمَ بَعْدَ السَّلَامِ. They realize it after they made taslim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. And they're sitting back, and then they realize, oh man, I forgot the ruku'. What do? So the Shaykh Rahimahullah Ta'ala, he says, فَكَتَرْكِ رَكَعَةٍ كَامِلَةٍ. Then they have to do that whole rak'ah again, as if the whole last rak'ah didn't count. Now let's say it happened on the second rak'ah. Then anything after that didn't count. They have to go back to the second rak'ah and build on their salat, as long as that time it wasn't a long period of time. Like, the next issue.
What time?
Okay?
What time?
Orphan.
No. What time wasn't a long period of time?
When they made taslim. So when they say, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, well, now you told the orphan.
What's considered a long time? You said generically?
Right. So when we say long time, the scholars of Islam, they explain long time to mean that which is customarily long, wherever society you come from. So in our society, for example, a long time might be 10 minutes. Another society, a long time might be 20 minutes. Another society, a long time might be 3 minutes. It all varies depending on the people. So a person might say, well, where do you get that from? What's the deal for that? Huh? Ulama al-Islam, they have a maxim or rule in a religion. It says, al-'ada muhakkama. Al-'ada muhakkama. Al-'ada muhakkama, it means that the customary practice of the people, it takes a rule in Islam, that which there's no clear text to determine what that thing is. So for example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in the Quran, وَعَاشِرَهُنَّ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ, live with your spouses in goodness. How do you define goodness? What does that look like? Huh? Goodness here might not be goodness in another society or another culture or so on and so forth. So then, in situations like this, the scholars say, al-'ada muhakkama, meaning that which is customarily known among those people take precedence in situations like this. That which is customarily known to those people take precedence in a situation like this, and Allah knows best. But the next issue. So right now, we just covered the wajibat. The arkan, or the leaving off a rukn. We gave you the rules for leaving off a rukn in the salat. The next part now, we're going to talk about leaving off something that is a wajib from the salat. Leaving off something from the wajibat. What do you have to do? So before we go into that, what do you do if you leave off a rukn? What do we have to do?
Do that rukn and then a prostration.
We have to bring that rukn, or that pillar that we left, and then do a prostration out of forgetfulness. Is that clear? Now, when we're talking about leaving off something that is wajib from the salat, we're going to talk about how we look at that. So the Shaykh Rahimahullah Ta'ala, he says, he says, وَإِن نَسِيَ التَّشَهُدَ الْأَوَّلِ وَنَهَدَ لَزِمَهُ الرَّجُوعُ مَنْ لَمْ يَنْتَسِبْ قَائِمًا. So the Shaykh Rahimahullah, he says, وَإِن نَسِيَ التَّشَهُدَ الْأَوَّلِ. If a person forgets the tashahhud al-awwal, like we mentioned before, he leaves off the tashahhud al-awwal, the first tashahhud, at-tahiyatu lillah. So for example, we're playing Salat al-Dhuhr. Instead of sitting after the second rak'ah, instead of saying at-tahiyatu lillah, he doesn't do it, he stands up. وَنَسِيَ, he forgets, tashahhud al-awwal. وَنَهَضَ, and he stands up. لَزِمَهُ الرَّجُوعُ مَنْ لَمْ يَنْتَصِبْ قَائِمًا. As soon as he stands up, he must return if he remembers, as long as he is not standing up, ready to get started in the next raka'ah. Like, why is that? Some of the scholars mention that this is because a rukn aqwa min al-wajibat, that a pillar is stronger than something that is from the wajibat. As soon as he stands up, he is now going into what? A pillar. And the pillar is stronger than something that is considered from the wajibat. هذا قول. طيب. So it says, if he forgets or she forgets the tashahhud al-awwal وَنَحَدَ لَزِمَهُ الرُّجُوعُ مَا لَمْ يَنْتَصِبْ قَائِمًا. It is obligatory for him to return back to the tashahhud al-awwal as long as he did not stand up straight and get ready to recite Al-Fatiha. فَإِنْ اسْتَتَمَّ قَائِمًا كُرِحْ رُجُوعُهُ. And if he does stand up, then it is hated for him to return back to the tashahhud. وَإِنْ شَرَعَ فِي الْقِرَاءَةِ حرم الرجوع عليه والسجود لكل. And so right now we have three cases. Case number one, he leaves off the tashahhud. So they give us three different scenarios of this person who leaves off the tashahhud. Number one, if he leaves off the tashahhud and before he stands all the way up, he goes back down. This is what is upon him once he remembers. Let's say he doesn't remember until he's already standing, but he didn't recite Al-Fatiha yet. In this case, it's makruh. It's hated for him to return. We didn't say that he couldn't, but it's hated for him to return. And then in the last case, once he starts reciting Al-Fatiha, Alhamdulillah, Rabbil Alamin, then he realizes, oh man, I left off the tashahhud. In this case, it is haram for him to return back to tashahhud al-awwal. Is that clear? So three situations. Number one, who can give them to me?
If you don't stand all the way up, you return back to it.
If you don't stand all the way up, it is obligatory for you to return back to it. Right?
If you stand and didn't start reciting, it's disliked.
Ahsant.
If you started reciting, it's prohibited to go back.
Ahsant. Mumtaz. Is that clear? Is that clear? Right. And then he says, وَحَرَمَ الرَّجُوعُ وَعَلَيْهِ السُّجُودُ لِكُلِّ. It's haram for him to return back to it, and what's upon him is the sujood as-sahu. He must make sujood as-sahu. Is that clear? Right. Now we're going to move on to the next part. The next part is ash-shak, doubt. So the ulama now, they explain to us about when there is a deficiency in our prayer. We left something off. We left off a pillar. Then we talked about how do we fix it if we left off a pillar. If we leave off something that is from the wajibat, then it shows us how to fix it. This is why it's important to know what the wajibat are and what the pillars of the salah are. Otherwise, you'll be lost. The third case, now we're going to talk about doubts. You have doubts in your salah now. Okay? So here, this issue goes as follows. The Shaykh Rahimahullah, he says, وَمَنْ شَكَّ فِي عَدِدِ الرَّكَعَاتِ أَخَذَ بِالْأَقَلِّ. Let's say, for example, you are praying Salatul Isha. And you're standing up, and you said, man, is this the fourth rak'ah or the third rak'ah? I'm sure this happened to people. You're standing up like, man, is this the... What do you do in a situation like that?
Go off of what you know for sure.
Go off of what you know for sure. But what if they have doubts, so they don't know for sure? How do you fix that?
You know for sure you're off of the first rak'ah.
All right.
So that you start the second rak'ah.
For right now, I'm in the fourth rak'ah. I'm debating. Am I in the third or the fourth?
Then you go back to, you know, you set for tashahhud, and that becomes the third. You build from the second, from after tashahhud, you build, and that standing becomes the third rak'ah.
So then, while I'm standing and I'm doubtful, I'll just say, okay, I'll just make this the third as opposed to making it the fourth.
Right.
But does anyone agree with that? You agree with it? You don't agree. Why don't you agree?
And see, now you add, let's say, you make this the fourth.
Right now we're debating.
Right.
I'm doubtful. Is this my third rak'ah or my fourth one? That's the scenario. Is this my third rak'ah or my fourth rak'ah? What am I supposed to do?
Go to the third one because you're not sure.
Go to the third one because I'm not sure.
Because you're sure about the third one, so you ain't sure about the fourth one, right? But you're sure about the third one.
Right. What you think?
Me, I think if it ain't my grade, then I'm gonna go for one more.
MashaAllah.
I mean, I'm gonna go for one more. That's what I would do.
What does that mean?
I'm gonna offer the fourth one. Between 3 and 4, I'm not sure. I'm gonna do 4.
So you want to go back to the third is what you're saying?
Yeah, count that as 4.
I'm gonna count that.
So you're going to count it as fourth. So you're not going. So if I'm debating on whether or not this is the third rak'ah or the fourth rak'ah, I'm just going to make it the fourth one.
Yeah.
All right.
I'm making another.
What did they say?
It's a pillar.
No, he said
They got a microphone?
They had one. They said they want to use it. So in this case, وَمَنْ شَكَّ فِي عَدَدِ الرَّكَعَاتِ أَخَذَ بِالْأَقَلِّ. In this case, right now we're debating, is this the third or the fourth? And they're saying, according to the method of Imam Ahmed, you're going to take the lower number. So you're going to go with the third. This is a question. They're going to go with the third. Where's the mic at? They're gonna look for the third. All right? So you're going to build from the third. Why? Because you're certain about the third, just like what he said. You're certain about the third, but you're doubtful about whether or not you did the fourth. طيب. The next one. He says, وَإِن شَكَّ فِي تَرْكِ رُكْنٍ كَتَرْكِهِ. Now let's say, for example, we're praying Salatul Isha. You're in the fourth raka'ah, right? And you have doubts, same thing. You have doubts that it says, وَإِن شَكَّ فِي تَرْكِ رُكْنٍ فَكَتَرْكِهِ. Let's say, for example, you have doubts. Did I go into ruku or not? You're in sujood, right? And you're thinking, man, did I go into ruku or not? Now you have doubt. Not that you know for surety that you did it. Now you have doubts of whether or not you did it. In this case, the ulama, they say, it says, فَإِن شَكَّ فِي تَرْكِ رُكْنٍ فَكَتَرْكِهِ. If you have doubt that you left off that raka'ah, then it is as if you left off that, if you have doubt as if you left off that rukn, or that pillar, then it is as if you left off that pillar. So you have to go back and do it again. Well then?
Say that again.
Alright. Let's say, for example, وَإِن شَكَّ فِي تَرْكِ رُكْنٍ. Right now you have doubts. Did I leave off?
About
Leaving off a rukn in the salat. Let's go back to the ruku'. You're in sujood now. You're in sujood and you're thinking, did I make a ruku' or not? Not that before we said, we know for a fact that you didn't do it. But now you're doubting. Did I leave off the ruku' or not? I don't remember. In this case, is it working? In this case, it's as if you didn't do it. So you go back and you fulfill that rukn that you left off. But وَلَا يَسْجُدُ لِشَكِّهِ فِي تَرْكِ وَاجِبٍ أَوْ زِيَادَةٍ. So then the next issue is, if you have doubts on whether or not you left off a wajib from the wajibat. Let's say, for example, the tashahhud al-awwal, the first tashahhud. Now you're in the fourth raka'ah, and you think, man, did I make tashahhud al-awwal? Did I make that tashahhud or not? You have doubts. In this case, they say, لَا يَسْجُدُ لِشَكِّهِ. In this case, it's not required to make sujood or sahu out of doubts and leaving off something that is wajib from the salah. And this is according to the fiqh of Imam Ahmed. And this is important to know. Here in America, right, we have many brothers and sisters that may have gone all over the world to study Islam. Right? So you're going to find people that may have went and studied the fiqh of Imam Malik, for example. And you're going to find people that may have studied the fiqh of Imam Abi Hanifa. And you're going to have people that studied the fiqh of Imam al-Shafi'i, and you're going to have people who studied the fiqh of Imam Ahmed. Right? So sometimes you're going to hear issues and positions based on adillah, but from different schools of thought. What we don't want to do is get into the habit of, if you hear something contrary to what I'm saying, then the other position is wrong, or you're wrong, and they don't know what they're talking about, blah, 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 to the end of it. This is a very, very extensive study that scholars have spoken about for years. And there are many issues like that. And as, you know, one of the things about studying Islam is levels to it. When a person first starts off studying Islam and you learn something, you say, you believe that you know everything. And then the more knowledge you get, you realize you don't know anything. The more knowledge, the more you learn, you realize you don't know anything. And so it's important that when you cover material, it's important for the learner to look at themselves and say, okay, I learned this, but I have to be careful because it's probably a whole lot more I don't know, right? But if a person wanted to show someone, say, listen, this is what I learned, A, B, C, D. This is all I know. Now, my knowledge stops here. I don't go beyond that. And this is safe. As the brother and I were speaking the other day, speaking about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's religion without knowledge. As Allah said, Allah mentions about speaking about Allah without knowledge is stronger, is worse than shirk. It's worse than shirk. It's a serious, serious issue. But speaking about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's deen without knowledge. Like, وَلَا يَسْجُدُ لِشَكِّهِ فِي تَرْكِ وَاجِبٍ أَوْ زِيَادَةٍ. So a person does not make sujood as-sahw for leaving off something that is from the wajibat of the salat. Even if a person has doubt, if they added something, if they're doubtful, they don't know, then there's no sujood as-sahw for that. The next issue. Any questions from the sisters? I'll just wait until we go. طيب. ولا سجود على مأموم إلا تبعا لإمامه. There is no prostration for the ma'moom as long as he is following the imam. So what that looks like is this. Say, for example, we are in the salat. We have the imam, and then we have people that are called ma'moom. The ma'moom are the people that are following the imam. So the imam or the ma'moom, the one that is praying behind the imam, let's say he left off something. Let's say he left off something in the salah. He didn't, oh man, I messed up. Do the ma'moom, the one that's praying behind the imam, does he have to make prostration out of forgetfulness? La. The only prostration out of forgetfulness he would have to make is following the imam in the salah. Now let's say he's masbuq. Masbuq means he comes to the salat late. And he makes a mistake on his own after leaving off from the imam. Then in this case, he will have to make sujood because he's by himself with that. Well then, is that clear?
So once the imam tasleem's out and he's on his own,
if he makes a mistake in that,
at that section, at that part of it.
Well then, is that clear? It's not clear.
No, because that happened and we were following the imam.
You were following the imam?
Yeah.
Was he masbuq? What does masbuq mean? Does anyone know what that word means?
Late.
Masbuq means you come to the salat late and the imam is already praying. So you might have missed a raka'ah or 2 raka'ah or what have you, and you joined the salat. If you make a mistake after the imam makes tasleem and you stand and you make a mistake during that part when you're by yourself, you are responsible for that. But if you make a mistake and you're with the imam yatahammal. That's his job. If the imam makes a mistake and makes sujood as-sahw, then you must follow him in that.
Right, that's
Like,
right.
وَالسُّجُودُ السَّهْوِ لِمَا يُبْطِلُ. And then they mention a qa'idah. They mention a principle. Sujood as-sahwi wajibun lima yubtilu amduhu. So anything that nullifies the salat, if it was done intentionally, then sujood as-sahw is legislated. So for example, let's look here. Let's say, for example, leaving off a pillar in the salat. If a person left off a pillar in the salat intentionally, what will happen? Nullify the salat. So then if a pillar is left off, then you must make sujood as-sahw. Then sujood as-sahw is wajib for anything that, if it was done intentionally, would nullify the salat. In this case, sujood as-sahw is legislated. Is that clear? Right. وَتَبْطُلُ بِتَرْكِ السُّجُودِ أَفْضَلِيَّتُهُ قَبْلَ السَّلَامِ فَقَطْ. Like this issue here, there's a lot of difference of opinion among the scholars about Islam with this issue right here. According to the school of Imam Ahmed ibn Hanbal, if a person leaves off sujood as-sahw intentionally, let's say, for example, they know they left off a rukn, they know they left off a pillar, and they come with that pillar, but then at the end they say, I don't really feel like doing this sujood as-sahwi. This will nullify that person's salat. Is that clear? If they left off the sujood as-sahwi intentionally. And now the next issue is, when do you make the sujood as-sahwi? Do you do it before the salam or after the salam? Is that question clear? When do you make the prostration of forgetfulness? Do you do it before the salams or after the salams? According to the school of Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, and like I said before, if someone studied a different school, they're going to say, well, I read that Imam Malik says this, Imam Shafi says that, Imam Abi Hanifa says this, and here's the dalil for this, and they all use the same evidence. And this is one thing, as you study Islam, you'll find that with the many different schools of thought, they all use the same ahadith for the most part. Then somebody might say, well, how do you get different rulings by looking at the same hadith? Because it comes from their extraction from that hadith. Each alim yastanbit min al-dalil ma yafhamin. Each alim, each scholar is going to pull from that hadith that which they understand from it, and they're going to have sahaba that take that position. And then they're going to mention, well, this is the position of Ibn Abbas, Sufyan al-Thawri, ila akhirih. And then you're going to find that the sahaba differ on understanding some of the fiqh of some of the ahadith. And this is the whole point of me mentioning that is that when we get into this issue here, someone will say, no, that's not what I read in book such and such. It's translated, it says this. He doesn't know what he's talking about. Right? Here, he said that أفضليته قبل السلام فقط is better. According to the school of Imam Ahmed, is afdal, better to make the prostration of forgetfulness before the salam. Before the salam, except for in one case. So right now, it's better to make the taslim or the sujood as-sahwi before the salams, except for in one case. The one case in which they mention that you should make it after the salam is when a person shortens the salat. Say, for example, like the hadith of Dhul Yadayn, when the Prophet ﷺ, he made taslim after two rak'at, and they said, has the salat been shortened or increased? He said, it hasn't been this or hasn't been that. And so the Prophet ﷺ, he came back, he did the 2 rak'at, he made the taslim, and then he did the sujood as-sahwi. He made the sujood as-sahwi after the taslim. So according to the school of Imam Ahmed, the only time when a person does the prostration out of forgetfulness after the salams is when they shorten the salah. Is when they shorten the salah. And the next part here, وَإِن نَسِيَهُ وَسَلَّمَ سَجْدَ إِنْ قَرُبَ زَمَنَهُ. So let's say, for example, if a person forgets, let's say they forget the sujood as-sahwi. وَإِن نَسِيَهُ وَسَلَّمَ سَجْدَ. If they forget it and they make the taslims, then they make the sajda again in qaraba zamana. If the time is close, and this goes back to the customs of the people, if the time is close, then they make that prostration of forgetfulness. وَمَنْ سَهَى مِرَارًا كَفَاهُ سَجْدَتَانِ. Let's say, for example, a person inside of his salat, he leaves off the tashahhud al-awwal. He leaves off the ruku'. He comes back, he fixes that in the salat. All is in the same salat. The person leaves off the ruku', he comes back, he fixes it, so he knows he has to make sujood as-sahwi at the end. Then he leaves off the tashahhud al-awwal. Now he knows he has to make sujood as-sahwi at the end. Then when he got down into sujood, he forgot to say subhana rabbiyal a'la. So he left off. Now you got 3 different things that require a prostration of forgetfulness. What should he do? Should he make 6 prostrations down because he did, each one qualify for 2 prostrations? Should he do it 6 times? Should he do it 1 time? Does he pick whichever one he feels more comfortable? What do we do in this case? Is the question clear first before I get an answer? Is the question clear? It's clear. Clear, Sheikh? Is it clear?
Not really. But
It's not really. No, if it's not clear, we'll stop. Bye-bye.
now it is, but I'm waiting to get understanding. So I'm gonna be.
Well, I'm going to give you, well, what do you understand from the question first?
What I understand from the question is that the individual made 3 mistakes.
Mm-hmm. And each mistake requires a prostration of forgiveness. Yes.
Isn't it just one prostration?
No.
For each
Two
one?
Two
prostrations.
One rukn.
He left off, okay, the person left off a rukn. He came back and fixed it, but now he's old, he still has to make the 2 prostrations, right? Then he left off the tashahhud al-awwal, the first tashahhud, now it requires 2 prostrations. And then he left off another wajib from the wajibat. He left off 3 things that require a prostration of forgetfulness. Does he have to make 6 of them at the end of the salat? You say 1.
He mixed up the pillow take the president over the rukn.
Okay, so let's say he left off 2 rukns. So shake sharp here. All right, listen to this. Let's say he left off a rukn in 2 raka'at and came back and fixed it. Now we got 4. So what is he supposed to do?
It still followed the same rule because he mixed up the pillow take the president over rukn. So therefore he do his 2 because.
But he left off 2 pillars. And each pillar, that thing that he left off, it would require. So he has to do 4. Does anyone agree with that? La. La. The answer to that is, if he makes many mistakes in the salat, then it will suffice him to just do 1 sajdatain. Yeah, sujood 2 times. That's it. So it doesn't matter how many times a person makes a mistake in the salat that requires the prostration out of forgetfulness. If he does it, if he only has to do it 1 time, meaning the 2 prostrations, Well, there, is that it? Right. So with that, we finish the prostration of forgetfulness, the bab sujood as-sahw laqad intahayna min. We finished it. Walillahil hamd. I'm sure it's going to take some reviewing. Probably going to go home. We record it, go back and watch it again. Also, next week, inshallah ta'ala, we will start bab salatul tatawwur wa awqat al-nahi. We're going to start off by the salat al-nafila and the times, the prohibited times that we should not pray in. Now,
Question. In the prisons, this is going back to the original where we started from, the first pillar of standing. In the prisons, you have brothers that pray in the visitor room sitting based on the salat going to be out by the time I get back to the cell.
Right. First question, number 1. In the prison, is it possible for you to ask the officers in the prison if you can stand and pray in the back?
Some prisons, no.
Like, if you can't, no matter, and you tried and you tried as much as you could to pray and they won't allow you. You mean as an inmate or as a visitor?
Inmate.
As an inmate. Then, Mustaq'ni, fear Allah to the best of your ability. But in that case, you can't leave off the salat. But you. Like, the sisters, y'all have any questions in the back? Class. Any questions online? You know, we've been getting a lot of heat, and we're not answering questions online.
I got another question. It relates to the prison.
Go ahead.
There's a brother, and this is an actual issue. There's a brother who's in the prison. The medical told him he requires knee replacement.
Right.
He wants to know, they're saying you keep agitating the knees could possibly speed up the need for the knee replacement.
Okay, speed up the need?
The knee, yeah.
Okay.
You're putting more wear and tear on there. And those who've been in prison know that the jails are not eager to get you no surgery.
Okay.
The brother wants to know, in this case, because of the harm that comes with it, should he begin standing? Because he wants to continue making sujood, but he wants to know, would it be better for him to stand with salat and sit for sujood when it comes to the
Allah Alam, Yahi. I mean, the thing is this: a person has to fear Allah to the best of their ability. If it's causing him injury, like Islam is not in place to cause you harm, right? Islam is not set up to cause any Muslim harm, right? If in our deen, la darar wa la darar, and this is a principle, one of the legal maxims in our religion. There's no harm. So if this person is unable to go down to sujood because of the pain that is going to cause him, then he has to do what he has to do to be able to fulfill that worship. That's like saying if a person is on their deathbed, they're in a hospital and they're immobile, they can't move. You have to pray with your eyes. And if only thing you can move is your neck, you got to pray with your neck. Yani the salat is never left off. Never left off, no matter what. So in this case, the brother has to do whatever he can do to fulfill that obligation.
Without the hardship.
Without the hardship, that's right. I mean, if you can't, I mean, sometimes brothers, they can't go down into sujood. For whatever the case, maybe they have back problems. And if they were to go into sujood, it would cause them severe pain. Perhaps they wouldn't be able to walk after that, right? La haraj fid deen. Our deen is not set up to cause people hardship. Allah knows best. No.
No, what he was saying, because I had bumped my knee, I damaged my knee. And I was going to Fajr prayer. And I had to stand, but I sit when I had to go in sujood because of that pressure. Then when I got a knee brace, I was able to go into sujood. Because at first I had the same problem. I thought I was doing something wrong because I wasn't going down to sujood like the rest of my brothers. And then someone said, like you said, make it easy. So I stood, like you said, stand before your Lord. So that's how
MashaAllah. Right. So do we have any other questions? Any questions online, Sheikh? Khalas? Mafi?
Somebody's not clear between the wajibat and arkan, but
so somebody want to know the difference between a wajibat and arkan?
yeah.
We can mention it again. Love it. I mean, we did mention it, we mentioned it in the beginning of the class. The difference between the wajibat and the arkan. And this was, if you didn't understand what the wajibat were and the arkan, then it would have been difficult for you to follow along in the class. Because the thing about sujood as-sahw is that it is predicated, at least this part of it is predicated with knowing what the wajibat are and the arkan. Did anyone write them down?
The what?
The arkan and the wajibat. Did you write them down?
I wrote down the total.
You wrote down the pillars?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah? How many do you have?
I have 11 of them.
So you missed the other 3?
I missed.
Or you condensed them?
I probably did.
All right, so let me read them off to you.
I did standing, takbir, reciting al-Fatiha, raku.
I'm going to read them to you, Sheikh. It's the first one, ahaduha, al-qiyam. As you mentioned, the first pillar was standing for the salat. Then we have takbiratul ihram, when we say Allahu Akbar to start the salat. Then we have qira'at al-Fatiha, reciting the al-Fatiha. Then we have a ruku', going down to ruku'. Then we have raising up from the ruku'. Then we have something called al-i'tidal, which is when your body is straight. There's no movements. Al-i'tidal min. And then we have the sujood, prostration. And then we have rising up from the sujood. Then we have the sitting between the 2 prostrations. This is also a pillar from the salat. And then we have tama'nina, which is a sense of tranquility. Not rushing through the salat. Then we have a tashahhud al-akhir, the last tashahhud of the salat. And then we have the sitting for the last tashahhud. And then we have the taslimatan, meaning the 2 taslims, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. And then we have tartib, meaning order. We have order in which we do it, order. that is 14. Now, in some books, it may be 12, maybe 11. They would have combined some of them. And then the next one for the wajibat, they're 8. They're 8 for the wajibat. At-takbir, ghayri ihram, meaning at-takbir al-intiqal. When we say Allahu Akbar, not the first Allahu Akbar, but rather there's another. When we finish reciting Al-Fatiha and we go into ruku', this is called takbirat al-intiqal. The takbir for movements. So you're moving from one position to the next. This is from the wajibat. And then we have the statement, Sami Allahu liman hamida. And then we have the other statement, Rabbana wa lakal hamd. And then we have another statement, Subhana Rabbil Azim. And then we have another statement, Subhana Rabbil A'la. And then we have Rabbik Firli. Obviously we know the positions that we're supposed to say these in. And then we have a tashahhud al-awwal, the first tashahhud. And then we have a sitting for the first tashahhud. The sitting for the first tashahhud. And that is what we have. Any other questions that I said? And also, we're getting ready to, in the process of putting together a Ramadan schedule for classes, inshallah, so we can actually finish covering how to fast before fasting actually starts. At the end of the event, we're going to start with that. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik. Ashhadu an la. Oh, there's a question? What's that? There's a fish fundraiser, fish fry on Saturday, March 17th. Start at 1 o'clock until gone. 1 o'clock until it's all gone. This Saturday, inshallah. And then there's a bake sale on March 24th, the following Saturday. The Saturday after that, to volunteer or donate baked goods. If you're a sister, call Sister Rahika. Can I read these numbers out? Let's. Khalas. Call Sister Rahika 267-241-6650 or contact Brother Naeem 267-690-3344. And we appreciate all the support that the brothers and sisters have been doing for IMFC. May Allah continue to reward you. Also, we had a luncheon. What was that, Saturday? Saturday, the luncheon. We heard that it went well. Alhamdulillah. May Allah bless us all with sincerity and tawfiq. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.